what are the stresses for a 50-year-old investor today?
Yeah.
Right?
That's not far from our age.
No, I know.
Right? I mean, we're
That's why I say that.
I nicely say my wife's a little bit closer than I am. But this is definitely something that we're experiencing and we're living. And it can start from, I just dropped my oldest son off at college to where are we going to retire someday? And how are we going to afford to live and maintain, the key word in my mind is, how are we going to maintain the same quality lifestyle I have today for 30, 40, hopefully 50 years in retirement?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that 50-year-old age is, I think, not that we're just in it right now is why I'm saying this, but I've come to realize, and I think they call it the sandwich generation.
Yep.
Is it what they call that? About being in a particular point in time where you've got like aging parents, or you're dealing with losing a parent, right? And they're also dealing with, if you're 50, you're most likely, if you have kids, you're dealing with teenagers, going to school, like Luke is. And I think this is a legitimate thing to talk about with 50-year-olds because there's some legitimate stresses that aren't necessarily present when you're 60 or 65 or when you're 35 or 40.
Yeah,
right.
And there's a lot of positives going on too. I mean, when you're in your 50s, a lot of people are in the peak of their careers. They're making the most money they've ever made. And there's a lot of good things they can be doing with what they've created for themselves over this extended period of time.
Yeah, yeah. So one of the things that that we talk about is when somebody gets close to retirement, this thought process of like downsizing. And that can mean a couple different things in your financial life, but often it's talked about in terms of maybe selling your primary home and moving to something smaller and so on. And that's not necessarily always needs to be the case for folks, right?
Right.
And I figure we could talk about a little bit, but what are some of the things that we deal with on a somewhat regular basis that we can do to maybe put more flexible decision making in someone's hands so that maybe they don't have to downsize at some point?
Yeah, a lot of that gets into what type of planning are you doing, right? I mean, a lot of people don't understand what the future value of money is and what's the future expenses that they're going to be incurring in time. And I think outlining that and preparing for that to set that expectation, number one, is probably the most important thing they can be doing, is understanding what retirement and what they're planning for actually might look like.
So arming yourself with the data first.
Information.
Yep. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, and then using that information to make informed decisions. And informed decisions don't necessarily mean, what am I going to have to cut out of my life in retirement? And in my mind, and when we're planning for people, we want to maintain that level of spending in retirement that they're having maybe when they're in their 50s, so they can enjoy it as much as possible. So it's what types of things can they be doing today that's going to have a positive long-term impact on the retirement. So maybe downsizing isn't the first thing they think about when they think about retirement.
First thing my mind goes to, okay, then what, right? Because my initial reaction, just kind of thinking about it and laughing about it in my head, is that, all right, what does that mean? Less Amazon packages on the front porch and more saving? I mean, there's, like we're talking about, there's all kinds of pressures, right? You got college tuition, you've got well, all kinds of things that are happening. So it's easy for us to say, oh, just save more. But what are the things that we can do that maybe are just a little bit more?
So let's start with save more. And the first thing I think about is, well, how are people generally saving? And I think most people right now, if they have a 401k or a 403b, if they're working for a nonprofit, they just pack money into that without really thinking about why or what they're doing with it. That not only goes with what they're doing with the investment side, but also thinking about taxes in the future, taxes that they're going to be incurring in retirement. And I know for myself, is as much money as possible I'm putting into a Roth 401k or a Roth IRA. And that's planning on, well, that future value of mine grows over the next 15, 20 years, and I don't have to pay taxes on it ever again. I pay it now and never again. And that's a benefit in retirement that most people aren't thinking about because they're such dialed into save, and let me maximize my 401k instead of where am I putting my money and what type of investment vehicle am I using to do that.
It's interesting you bring that up because it's not something that we see often with a lot of folks, which is, I'll kind of quantify what you just said there, as actually tax planning. Right? Thinking about your taxes today and how you're operating within that realm, and then projecting that out in terms of, like, well, your example was, all right, even though I'm in a higher income, I'm still biting the bullet today, from a deduction standpoint, and putting as much money as I can in a Roth 401k so that I can project and know that, when I go to take that money out years later, I don't have to worry about paying taxes on that money. So that's one thing you bring up that I don't think, well, we know not a lot of folks, they get their taxes done, but how much planning is going on with the taxes? Now, our clients work with us on tax planning, but that's something of something that folks just aren't doing.
Yeah, and I think if you're doing it the right way with the right intentions, which is long-term benefits, if you're thinking short-term, everyone's going to say, well, pay as little money as taxes. If you think long-term, well, that might be biting the bullet a little bit more in the current day to pay taxes and make up for it down the road. So I think you're right, is getting your taxes done is not tax planning. Getting your taxes done is just a requirement by the IRS. Tax planning should be something that each and every one of us does on an annual basis after we file our tax returns for the year.
Yeah, so not just putting together all your 1099s and everything and handing it to somebody and then getting hopefully a refund back, but actually having a conversation about, all right, what are the things that I can be doing, and maybe not necessarily like you just said, right, the benefit now, but are there things that I can be doing today that could possibly put me in a better tax situation down the road? Because that's something that's something good to think about with respect to, all right, well, if I can mitigate the possibility of having to downsize, if I don't want to downsize down the road, I want to do that, right?
So we talk about savings as a way to help plan for the future. Is how are you saving? Where are you saving? What else is top of mind when you think about someone in their 50s and things that they can be doing to benefit their retirement?
Yeah, well, the biggest thing, right, when we talk about people and the biggest benefit in investing is the first thing is runway, right? Is that how much time do you actually have to accumulate and have that accumulated money compound year over year? And then the next thing that comes to mind is, once we've got that kind of situated, then it's the what. What do we invest in? And so to your question, the thing that comes to mind is, what is for lack of a better description, what is the type of investment that I can think will give me the best bang for my buck over what is a longer period of time, right? If we're looking at a 50-year-old, then you're looking at a scenario where, am I retiring at 62? Am I retiring at 65? Or maybe even earlier? You've got a runway there where if planning, tax planning, saving, those things are done right, and then you're investing in an asset class that's most appropriate for what that long-term goal is, then you're in a scenario where, hey, I can really maximize my returns in their appropriate parameters over that period. So that could definitely contribute to the possibility of not having to downsize 10, 12, 15 years from now if you're investing appropriately to what your plan needs. What do we see, though, when folks come in and sit down in our office, though? We see, I don't know what I'm doing in my 401k. I'm not talking about current clients, I'm talking about potential prospective clients, but oftentimes we see the opposite, right? It's like, I'm pumping money away, so I'm doing the savings part, but there's not a lot of optimization there. So you go in there and you see a target date fund for a 50-year-old. It's a target date fund being the preset allocation based upon your age, that those tend to be a lot more conservative than they need to be. So more conservative means over time a lot less return. And so that's not necessarily optimizing your returns over a long period of time. It's actually kind of shooting yourself in the foot. So we see that all the time.
Yeah, I love the word optimize, because what we're trying to do is how do we optimize a portfolio for as long as possible to be working on our client's behalf. And optimizing those portfolios and investing them in the right places is definitely step one. So when we think about building those types of portfolios, what are we using, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we are using the asset class that we have the data on over long periods of time, right? And that from a risk standpoint, you know, if you're going to invest in something remotely risky, there better be the potential for larger than normal returns on the other side, right? So otherwise, why would you take the risk on something if the return wasn't there?
Right.
So we invest in a portfolio of well-diversified individual equities, stocks of some of the greatest companies in the world, right? And our thought process there is, look, for anybody that has any kind of long time horizon, you look back at the data, the empirical evidence in, for example, the S&P 500, it's hard to find a long time period that not only wasn't positive, but was, you know, most periods are positive to the tune of about 10% per year.
Wow.
So that's the type of return that I think a lot of people, particularly long-term investors we come in contact with, should be investing. You know, when you get it in a conversation, you know, you understand what their goals are, but up to that point have not been for whatever reason.
Right. And we're not talking about taking every single dollar and putting it into some high-risk individual stock. We're still talking about a diversified portfolio and a risk tolerance that makes sense for these clients.
And diversified is a term that's thrown around a lot. I mean, diversification, so that everybody knows what our definition is, which is, I think, is important, right?
Yes.
It's kind of similar to when somebody says, I want to be risky or I want to be conservative. It's like, they just said that. You know, we're professionals in this business, you know, I still don't know what that means because that's very subjective based upon their interpretation.
Individual.
So I think it's necessary to, you know, when it comes to diversification, it's very simply put, we never own so much of something where if it goes against you, it can be tremendously detrimental to your financial plan. And on the flip side of that is, we don't ever own enough of something where if it goes up by a lot, it's going to be like hitting grand slams. You know, certainly the portfolios can do well, but that's our definition, if that makes sense, of diversification, is that you need to have enough of things in order to have an impact, but we're never going to have too much of one thing where if that goes wrong, things are going to be really bad for your financial plan. That's our mandate. That's our responsibility.
It's perfect. So when we think about those, where we started this conversation with things we can do as 50-year-olds, where we're talking about obviously saving in the right places. We're talking about optimizing portfolios with how the money's invested. And I think the third part of this is having a plan and sticking with a plan.
Sure.
What jumps out at you when you think about starting and creating a plan for that 50-year-old individual or couple? What are you going through with them?
Good question. Well, the first thing that drives any kind of plan in our business, in my opinion, or any other kind of business, a business plan, right? Is, well, what are we doing this for? Meaning, what is the goal of engaging together? And if you ask me, that's the most important part, is really getting a good understanding of what is the objective. And with us, as you know, it's not just, I want to retire at 62, or I want to put my kids through college. It's often, with a little digging, a little bit more emotional than that. You know, I want to earn enough money and accumulate enough money so that we can buy a home in a vacation spot that we love. Well, why is that? Because you know what? My kids are getting older. They're going to have families at some point. I know from friends and family of ours that, you know, people kind of disperse. I want somewhere to go where everybody in the family can come back for holidays and so on. We can spend time together. That's the type of things that we try to talk to with everybody.
Yeah, and it's setting the expectation.
Yeah.
Is this a realistic goal for them
Yeah.
based on everything that we know for them or not? And if it is a realistic goal, we want to show them the path to that success.
Starting to get a good handle on goals and objectives, what's the next thing that you move to in that conversation?
Yeah, I think the next logical thing that we talk about is, what are we going to do to achieve this?
Yeah.
What is the path that we're going to get there, right? That could be how are we going to save? Where are we going to be putting money? How are we going to be doing it?
Yeah.
How much money are they going to be able to spend towards this or save towards this? So I would say that once we understand what those objectives are, we start mapping out the process of achieving it.
Yeah.
Down to exactly what you need to be doing on a weekly, monthly, annual basis.
So the financial pathway, so
Yeah.
to speak, it's like the numbers behind it. So, all right, you've got this goal. How much is this goal going to cost? Right? And how much do we really want to accumulate by that time in the future in order to achieve that? Great. All right, now how do we achieve that? How do we execute upon that? So that's the second thing that you go to.
Right, and I think that might be the best part of this is we literally will outline what they need to do to make these goals achievable. And we stick to the plan, and like you said, it's a business plan. I know when we talk about business planning with Beck Bode, we don't just do it once and set it on the shelf and say, okay, we're going to revisit this in 20 years and hopefully it worked out.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, we call it our goals planning statement, and we're going to review this at least annually to make sure we're on the right track to achieving the goals.
Yeah.
And guess what? Some of these goals are going to change, right? And some of them are we're going to have to adjust and think about different strategies and ways that we can make things achievable for our clients.
So what do you say, to put you in the spot, what do you say to folks that, you might have had a conversation with in the past, and they say something like that to you? They say, you go through your process of, look, I really want to understand what your goals are and put a plan together so that we have some sort of a North Star, so to speak, that we're shooting for all the time. And somebody comes back to you and says, oh, well, the markets go up and down, and I might have different goals down the road. How do you address something like that?
Yeah, I mean that's the reality of what a lot of people think is that, why do I even want to do this?
Yeah.
Right? Like things change so much. What's the purpose of it?
Yeah.
But I think just like anything else, having a pathway to success and maintaining that pathway and adjusting that path along the way is the best way to achieve success.
Yeah, it's kind of a cop-out from their end, right? It's like, I don't want to deal with sort of the unknown. Well, everything from this moment forward in our lives is unknown to a certain extent. There's no facts about the future, right?
Yeah, I mean, we can do our best work for our clients when there is a goal that we're planning for. And most people think that their only goal that they have in life is, I just need to retire.
Yeah.
But I like when you just mentioned that, let's get a little emotional. Let's drag a little bit more out of what are their hopes and dreams and figure out what else is important to them. And let's see what else we can make that's going to be achievable.
You know what's great? You made me think of is I was on the phone with a new client that's coming aboard. We're going through the conversation the other day, and and then he turned it around on me.
Yeah.
And he said, tell me what your goal is.
Yeah.
And I said, what do you mean by that? And he said, no, we've had this great, and I've really appreciated this conversation, Ben, about, with me and my wife, about going through the most important things. And he said, what's kind of your kind of corny, long-term, whatever it is, not corny, but some things that you're reaching for. And I said, you know what? Nobody's ever asked me that in the context of a conversation, a client advisor conversation. But I'm glad you did. And very quickly, my answer to him was, I love to travel. I love to travel with family. I love the independence of being able to pick up on the spot and go somewhere. And you already know the answer to this. But it's like my dad was a helicopter pilot for a long time, and I started to learn to fly a helicopter. One of my long-term goals is to continue that pathway and actually own a helicopter. So, hey, we can drive over to Norwood Airport whenever we want and say, hey, we're going to go up to the coast of Maine and jump in the helicopter and go up there.
Yeah.
That was mine.
Well, I might as well share what my long-term goal would be if I'm thinking about things that I want for my family. And
the Jets to win a Super Bowl?
The Jets to win a Super Bowl, number one, because we would all be at the Super Bowl together.
What's option two?
We'll make our way through that. Yeah. I have always had this dream that at some point in our life, I have 3 kids, that we would almost have a Beck or a Bode block. Just a Bode block where we owned a cul-de-sac that our family could all live on with their spouses and grandkids, and it would be a pretty cool little place that we all lived. Yeah. Not sure if my kids want to be that close to me. But we talk about what are the dreams, and I just think that would be really neat. Family's really important to me, and having them as neighbors would be amazing.
Yeah, that's actually fantastic. And the comment about the not sure about the kids want to do that. It's like, my son left for school today and didn't say much to me, so, at this age, it can go either
you
way.
Never know.
But I
You
think
never know.
I'm holding faith that as they get older, they'll want to come back.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Just thinking that means I got to buy 3 more homes.
That's all right. In time.
In time.
Yeah. Let's talk about, in the context of the plan, because this is part of our financial planning conversation, what do we do about the unexpected events that come up, right? So there's things that, like we talked about in the future, that come up that it's not, well, yeah, it is. They're unplanned in the sense that, hey, look, what is someone's health going to be like when they're 70 or even sooner than that? What are some of the conversations that you have and some of the enlightenment, so to speak, through planning that you give to them?
There's always something that comes up unexpected, and it could be as simple as a job change or an unexpected job change, or it could be your health. And I think the one thing with investing and planning is to be nimble, is to be able to adjust, number one, and looking at, okay, this is an event that just happened. Number one, short term, let's look at how this affects your financial future, and long term, and what are our options to go from there. I think for planning, one of the most important things to be is to be open-minded.
Right.
So when I think about when those unexpected events occur, number one, it doesn't mean that everything is ruined. It doesn't mean the plan is going to fail. It just means, well, how do we adapt, and what changes do we need to make to still proceed around the same goals?
And we build that into the GPS, right?
Correct.
In terms of a monetary amount of money, right? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so a lot of people think like, oh, I need a safety net. And I've never liked to talk about having money sitting on cash or in a reserve
On the
account,
sidelines, right?
on the sidelines, as a safety net. I always refer to it as a contingency.
Right.
In the event that something happens unexpectedly, there's a contingent amount of money. Every client is going to be slightly different based on how much money they have or how much money they spend on an annual basis. That's going to allow them to draw off of that over an extended period of time. And I like calling it a contingency because it's really set aside for the event or in the event that something unexpected happens.
Yeah, and it's really important too, right? Because I find while anything unexpected can be tough to deal with, but when we have clients that are still working, right? They're 50, for example, like we're talking about today. I like the word you use, nimble. There's a element of flexibility there. If you're still working, you're still getting income, something unexpected happens. It's not optimal, to use optimal again in a different way, but you have a lot more options, right? If you're still working, you're still gaining an income. But to your point about the planning process and having that contingency set up, that's one of the most powerful things I think, and I know you agree with me, the 50-year-old can do in going through the planning process and actually part of the retirement plan, setting aside that contingency also and planning for that so that when you do retire, whether it's 62, 65, and then something unexpected happens, you have a certain amount of cash that you set aside. You didn't know what it was going to be for, or if it was going to be used or needed to be used at all, but you plan for it when you're 50, you're now 62 or 65, that money is now there. It's a legitimate contingency plan that you made the decision on way back when you were 50. I think that's powerful, and you opened up this conversation about, hey, one of the most powerful things you can do is actually take the time to plan first and foremost. So that's a powerful piece.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what planning is all about, is trying to see how to achieve your goals, and then how are you going to adjust when something doesn't work out exactly the way that you want. And that's part of the whole plan. That's what we build in.
Yeah, it's one of the things that, when life will throw curveballs, hopefully not all the time, but every once in a while. And certainly you want to be dealing with that curveball and be somewhat prepared for it, if you can be. And so when those unexpected things happen, if we're prepared, if we took our reps in the batting cage, if we were sitting back and waiting for that ball to travel, we can actually do something with that curveball instead of being just blown away by it. So that's an important piece of the planning process. Good talk today.
Yeah, I love thinking about our demographic personally, because we can talk about things that we're dealing with on a regular basis.
I mean, don't rush me to 50 years old, but we are getting a lot closer to it. So awesome. Well, good talk, and I hope everybody listening got some useful pieces out of this, and we're looking forward to the next one.